Guys, why don't we get started? First, thanks everyone for showing up today. Greatly appreciate it. Just for a logistics thing, just so when we do this in the future, we did miss Counselor Wagner in the email last night when I brought it up as a reminder to everyone. Well, I don't know anything about this. So he had to work today anyway, so he wouldn't have been able to make it. But just for future emails going out, he was missed on this one specifically.
And the point of it was he's just being a little baby boy.
Noted.
My father didn't filter anymore. Well, you know, you just had a big birthday, right? And now they go.
So the first thing on here is the key to long-term visioning and sustainability. At our last meeting, we kind of discussed that. We asked Paul to come in. I don't think that it's a shocker to anybody in this room, but the city, along with the county, seeing what our levy increases has been 9.5 for the city and 18 for the county. We're struggling financially and putting that burden on the taxpayers. We're really at a point where we need to start cutting and we need to start having some strong conversations with the county. So I greatly appreciate the fact that we're having this meeting. So we did ask Paul to come in and talk about the long-term visioning and the sustainability. One of the issues that we've had, that we've discussed at the city is this is the first time that we've been asked to reinvest back into KEDA, and we're just kind of concerned that this may be a start of annual funding for the program. And I know it's been Councilor Kaler's opinion, and I guess it's mine as well. We cut our city EDA director because we couldn't afford to put monies towards that, and that's why we went with KEDA. But now if we're going to be putting monies towards KEDA annually, I mean, that's going to be something that we want to take a look at in the city as well with what's happening. So that's why we're asking to have Paul come in. We have the chair and members of KEDA in the room, so I would love to hand that off to Paul just to discuss the long-term visioning and what we're looking at financially in the future.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity, because even though we have representatives from both city and the county on the board, that we've got some new faces and some people that are new to kind of the organization. So it's always helpful, I think, to provide some context on. And I'll let Chairman Rasmussen and Commissioner Mike maybe talk about some of the history. But just specific to the request, we have not received funding from the city or the county since 2014. Most of our budget comes from the IRRB through the special legislation in 2000, which created KEDA. So we get a formula every year that accounts for about a third of our budget. We do get some additional funding from some of the admin that we do for, say, koochiching and the airport commission that helps to pay Kyra's salary. But we're down to 2 employees now, and the rest of our budget, revenue, comes from cold weather testing activity at our airport facility that KEDA manages. The city and the county have invested in that cold weather testing facility since it started, and I was hired initially to manage the facility, and it has grown and has been very successful with the initial investment between the city and the county and the original cold box. Now we've got 3 cold boxes out there. We've got a 30-year-old building that houses 2 different customers at a time, but one long-term customer that we were fortunate to ink for 5 years, and they're still with us. So as the automotive industry has evolved and more emphasis and direction and investment in electric vehicles, we do have some chargers out there that have been provided. One of our customers provided those, but now we're getting requests from the rest of our other customers for fast charging capability as more and more of their vehicles are going electric. So in order to stay in front of the curve and to continue to generate the kind of revenue that we do, it's an investment that has to happen. So we partnered with Minnesota Power, and found a location where we could run a new feed into the property. We would have to set a very large cement pad to support trucks, Class 8 trucks, as well as automotive, 2 different user groups, 4 chargers eventually. One of our customers is supplying 2 fast chargers, which is a significant investment as well. So we partner where we can. We have to. We wear many hats to make all this work, and I appreciate where the city and the county are at financially. We're experiencing the same thing that you guys and everybody in the room is facing, and that is expenses keep going up. Inflation's taken historical budgets and skewed them all up, and so we're the only other time we've come back to the city and the county since they haven't funded us operationally directly since 2014 is when we have a project that is outside of our capacity. For instance, we built 2 new cold boxes in the city and the county. We got a deed grant for both of them, and so the city and the county made up the matching, and we paid them back at 2%. We had a cash flow issue this year, which again was partly due to inflation, and we asked the city EDA if they would provide us some a gap loan to cover our shortage or our cash flow bind, and we're in the process of paying that back. So the estimate on the electrical piece was approximately $50,000. Now this was done right as budgets were being put together. We asked for some numbers for the entirety of it, and it was between 40 and 50. So given that, we went back to the bodies and said, hey, this is outside of what we can afford beyond our operations. If you could split it and help continue to invest in the facility. The other thing that's happening, and this is ongoing, and as you guys know that deal with 30-year-old buildings, there's always something to upgrade at the facility. And our customers give us tremendous feedback, and every year we ask them for what else could we be doing. So we've changed out all the LED lighting in there. We've added hoists. We've added new tile this year, flooring. A whole host of things over the years that incrementally add up. And so in order for us to be competitive, you have to continue to invest. So that's a long way of saying we needed to come back to both bodies to help us with this next kind of generation of where we're going to be with electric vehicles, and that was the $50,000 for running the power in and staging it for initially 2 chargers, but the hope is to get to 4 at some point. So that was the request. So in terms of, excuse me.
Oh no, it just one of the things that I kind of wanted to ask as before you get too much farther in is, as we've done those upgrades that were being requested from our customers, is there any changes to their contracts with increase? Because I mean, across the board, nationally, internationally, there's increase of costs across the board. So if we're paying more, is that something that is being pushed back onto the customers as they would with any other?
The answer is yes. We've had to increase our rates because of the cost of especially energy. But our other partners, JLR, we partner with some of the investment. They'll pay half, or they'll pay for all of it if they request it. If it's something that's non-physical to the building, if they want something additional, they will pay for it themselves. But otherwise, we'll split the cost if it's structural or relative to the building.
What about some of the other customers that?
Yeah,
same concept.
Same concept, but their requests are more, historically we've been able to meet, but with current funding. But we've had to raise our rates certainly to offset some of the operational costs.
And historically, we have ran into that gap between when we bill and when we pay. Is there any way that we can start looking at how to push that up so that the time frame, or to be prepaid for a certain amount for the year, and then anything above and beyond those charges get billed at the end of the year.
I wish that was the case, because it'd make our life a lot easier, but I don't know if you've worked with the automotive industry and
Let's just be honest, no, I haven't.
Well, a lot of the big three, a lot of the customers we work with have a third party, and the terms are 90 days or worse, and you don't get to negotiate those. If you want, and we're a very, very small supplier in the scheme of things. So when I call Abu Dhabi and ask for a break on the terms, it's not received very well.
Fair enough.
But no, yeah, I mean, because you're right, it's timing. At the time, we invoice till we actually get paid. Sometimes it's beyond 100 days, and so meanwhile during the peak of the season, that's when all your bills are that's when everything comes in front of you. So it's hard to maintain. We used to be able to maintain a little bit of a cushion in there, yeah. But as time has gone on.
Okay. What about sustainability? I mean, or where are we going?
And that's a real fundamental question. I don't know, without some sort of support, even if it's a smaller amount. But we've tried again to do with the revenue stream that we have and the sources that we get to make it work. But all it would take would be a couple of our customers to say, you know what, we're going to go somewhere else, or we're not doing it this year, and it would put us in a really tough bind.
In the event that a customer were to say that, let's say we had two customers that did say, you know what, we're going to go somewhere else. International Falls isn't working for us. How does that factor in with everybody else that we're carrying? I mean, obviously, if we can't support, if we lose two, then we're financially not able to be profitable or be able to sustain what we have. How does that affect the other vendors that we have?
Well, it doesn't really directly affect them. I mean, it just makes that uncertainty larger, and the hope is, and we've done a good enough job, handling our customers, that we're confident in the near term that we can, we'll be able to replace those with other folks, especially the way that these companies are built and the way that their engineering groups are divided. But we should be okay. But that's hard to say. Again, near term, over time, if they go electric, the need for a lot of these other departments all of a sudden is starting to shrink. So, I look at other economic development groups around the region and how they are funded, and they're each funded a little bit differently. But for instance, Itasca Economic Development in Grand Rapids, they've got 7 staff people, 7, and they're funded by Blandon and by the city and county, and I'm not saying that we ever would need that big a staff, but it's interesting when you talk to these folks. Or Bemidji, they have 6 staff people, and they're funded through the city and other sources, sometimes private businesses will invest in them. There's a different model for everybody, of course, depending on how how big they are. But one of the things, and I'm glad Alan and Mike are here, because one of the other things that's difficult about economic development, because everybody in the room says, well, yeah, we're for economic development. Who's not for job creation? Who's not for a vibrant community? But the thing that anybody that's involved in it is all this stuff takes a long time from initial contact. And since the county EDA, the KDA, doesn't really have a staff person in the city, no longer can support that. So we become the point of contact. And I'll just give you an example, like the 2 hotels. It was 2+ years from the moment I got a phone call till they actually put a shovel in the ground. So a lot of these, and we've gone after things in the past for, well, the county went after the peat for, I think it was 20 years before it actually, came to fruition. But some of these, you pursue them and you get to a point where they don't make sense. And the public doesn't know this or not, because a lot of the times you're not reporting on it because you wait for the customer to say, this project is a go. And now we can, and you've been a part of some of that, right?
Yeah.
Cantilever took 2+ years. So if you're serious about economic development, and if it is a priority, you have to, number one, think long term, and you have to say what makes the most sense. You have a primary point of contact, one staff person with an assistant that essentially is doing work on your behalf. And I think, do we add value? I think, yeah. I think, we've proven that historically. Maybe not as we haven't met our goals all the time and targets, because that's the nature of this work. I mean, you just, you guys know how hard it is to recruit people here, and create jobs, create good paying jobs, given all the challenges out there, housing, workforce, go down the list. So, getting back to the initial question, long-term viability, I don't know the answer today, what that is. We've talked about,
Absolutely.
the need to brainstorm and say, okay, what else can we do in lieu of, say, COVID testing to bring in revenue, or what else can we do, maybe looking at what other agencies do. Do you go to private business and say, hey, you want to support and have a seat at the table? Is that what, I don't know. But I know that just the last couple of years, the challenges that inflation and increased prices have put on everything we do. And I've cut back on travel considerably. We used to have a car, a company car. We no longer have that, and that was kind of as a result of just trying to make the budget work. But those things, and Alan, again, this history, we used to go to a lot of these events in the Twin Cities and conferences and National Foreign Trade Zone Conference. I stopped going to those because you have to, it's partly because of COVID, but partly was, is there real value in it at this point in time? And so we're consciously making those decisions to cut back and try to make it work. And so, a long way to get there, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Does anybody have any questions for Paul or thoughts on what's going on? Just, I don't know if the county knows on the financing from the city of the $25,000. We voted not to give them the $25,000. However, we did give them a loan that has not been repaid. So we cleared $25,000 from that loan. So we still essentially gave the money, but we didn't give more. We're just not asking to be refunded in its entirety. So just background information on that.
And that was all of our belief, I think, because like Paul said, if we're going to continue this, we do have to get on board with electric charging, because that's everything like next year is going to be basically, that's what they're testing here, is going to be a lot of electric cars. I remember when Mr. Sutherland come and talk to us that day and how many they already were testing here and that. And whether, like I said, whether people want to agree or not agree that it's going to work or not, I was just somewhere this weekend and I parked right next to a couple chargers someplace, so it is if we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think all the automakers have set targets to try to go full EV or 90% EV for their fleets, and that's not that far off. So yeah.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
To add to what Paul is sharing, one really important component of the cold weather testing is this, regarding our relationship with the airport. There's been cold weather testing going on at the airport for 75 years. What's interesting is in the last 50 years, by far the majority of the component testing has been automotive, has been ground-based vehicles, not aviation. We have a tremendous working relationship with the cold weather testing team. Just a little background on the relationship that we have regarding other airports. We're the only commercial or carrier airport in the United States who has cold weather testing inside the fence. And we have a great working relationship with FAA, great working relationship with MnDOT Aeronautics and other regulatory bodies. And I just can't emphasize enough that for the community, for International Falls and for Koochiching County, they're getting bang for the buck there, guaranteed. There's tremendous amount acreage of hard surfaces that we work with Paul and the testing teams. We go to great lengths to allow them to use taxiway surfaces and what have you, fresh asphalt surfaces for their testing requirements. So it's very utilitarian where we're getting a lot. There is a lot getting done there on the cold weather testing side, I promise.
Excellent. Anybody else have anything to add from the county's perspective?
Just a quick question on the private avenue for something like this. Has that ever been looked at in the past?
Go to private
Yeah,
business.
kind of a public-private partnership.
Yeah, I know early on, I think that was discussed, and I don't think it was ever pursued at that time, just because it wasn't needed at that time, but I think it was when the agency I think they looked at other economic development groups and how they were funded, and I think they came up, but I don't think we seriously did approach. And part of that too is you had the chamber as kind of a partner too, and the chamber is funded by private businesses, and we all know how much private businesses get hit up every day for contributions and for different organizations, and so there's a lot of strain there too, and probably the timing is probably not ideal to pursue something like that. But I think you got to put everything on the table, and see, does it make sense now, or is it something in the future you have to look at more seriously?
I just thought our misgivings, or not misgivings, but questions has nothing to do with what they're doing out there right now. With the kind of like I understand their work in there, because I used to see cold weather vehicles all the time. You see them now, you see them today. Right? So that is a question, just it's more of a how we can keep going.
All right. If there's nothing else on KEDA, I think that this is a good conversation. I think we have to continue having it, especially with, as we continue these conversations with the city and the county, coming up with other revenue sources, or, I talked to Paul about this one, and this isn't my baby in any capacity, but one of the things that I've really latched on is there's $1 billion in Minnesota, no, $1.6 million in Minnesota that's going to cities and counties to film movies. And it's a complete subsidy from the state to have people come into your communities, and they spend upwards to $100,000 a day in your community between using local businesses, using hotels, and with Amazon and Hulu and all of these different places. We're not talking movies that go to the movie theaters. We're talking movies that go on to streaming services, and they're always looking for locations. Koochiching County and International Falls are the only city and county that has 6,000 people for a city, or a county that isn't on the state site. So we have nothing selling International Falls and Koochiching County for the thing. We've talked about it at the city EDA. It's something that I've been looking into. I've kind of taken it as something I see value in. No cost to us other than bringing up a website and doing a fee with the state's film board, and it just gets our name on it, and there's a small fee, but with that being said, it brings people to the area. We don't have any cost except for having some people take pictures of locations that would make sense, like a barn or a road or an airport, just things that make sense. So that's one of the things that I'd love to explore, along with anything that Mr. Hansen wants to talk about right now.
The shiners are running in the river. I don't know.
It's beautiful levity at the right time. Wow. Yeah. That's an expert right there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know, I probably have spoken this too many times. But I don't know if we're interested in Mary in getting the history of KETA and how it was formed.
I am well versed on how it was formed. There may be some people that want to hear that, but I've heard the story. Go ahead.
Well, believe it or not, the city council and the county board were getting along. And it was 1996. And I'd like to stop right there and say that what you folks are doing is a terrific transition. You just guys can't sit down and talk enough.
And I interject, we're not done yet, though, today, so make it good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great step because it's just something that probably should have been done a long time ago and it hasn't been. But in the late winter of 1997, Irvin Anderson called me and told me that him and Jack Murray had been talking, the mayor of the International Falls, and they'd like to sit down with both the council and the county board to talk about the future, but they didn't do it they didn't want to do it in a public fashion. So I and Wade Pavlik and Tom West was employed at Rainy River at that time, and he served as our go-to person for minutes and so forth. And Paul McLaughlin was a counselor, and him and Mayor Murray, we met every Saturday morning for 3 months at the Rainy River Community College and kind of conceived KETA and talked about partnerships that really hadn't had in the past. And we started it, both the county board and the city threw in a bunch of dollars. And we offered the job to Julie Schumacher, and she was smarter than us, she turned it down. We made, I can't tell you how many mistakes, and went through 3 or 4 different directors, each time thinking that, this time we're going to really make progress. But we never made that much progress until Paul came along. And we decided the first thing we were going to do is go to the legislature, and we were going to build a world-class cold weather testing facility. And we did it. I don't know how many times I got on the airplane on Saturday mornings when the finance committees were meeting in St. Paul, and fly down there, and a gentleman would walk out the door and go to the restroom, and I'd grab him and say, we're trying to get this done, and I know it's a lot of money, and so forth and so on. And we were successful. I don't know how many $1 million was, I can't recall right now, set aside for it by the legislature, and we were excited. We were going to have big stuff going on. Until I woke up one morning and found out that Governor Ventura line item vetoed it. We were done just like that. That effort resulted in the International Falls and the county putting a bag of money together to start working with the airport and SOAR and build the buildings, and we got business right off the bat. And it had to do with Paul's background in cold weather testing. One of the things that happened that just is history is the company that is big in Badette, they wanted to come here. We were also at the same time hosting other candidates for the place here, and cold weather testing was going through big changes, and there was going to be a lot more money invested than they had in the past. So Mayor Murray called the mayor of Badette and said, we have a candidate here for cold weather testing. It doesn't really have any place to go. Is it okay if I give him your number? And we ended up in Badette and are still there, and they're going great guns. But because of Paul, we jumped right into the fray right away and were highly successful. There was a number of people hired for drivers and so forth and so on. And the county and the city both kept putting stickers into the KETA pool to make it go. And to make it viable. And then in 2012, 2013, they actually produced enough money so that the county and the city both could quit putting public tax dollars into that office. And until now, it's pretty much carried its own. And I don't know that there's any facility that you can say had no public tax dollars in it. Times have changed, so that's kind of where we're at now. But that's how it started. It's been 25 years, and the relationship has been real good. We had some raised eyebrows when we picked two people from the county, two people from the city, a citizen from the city that became Mr. Rasmussen, and a gentleman from out county. And at that time, it was Jerry Struce. He was the superintendent of schools in Int'l and in Northome. And I think he helped really guide us completely. To get an odd number in case of votes, we asked at that time Irvin Anderson if he'd be a member. And that's how the Minnesota representative got a seat at the table. And we really did it as thinking that if we come up with a project, if we have the representative sitting with us, we kind of treated him like a banker, thinking that would kind of bring in and he'd understand exactly what we're doing. So as we've moved on, and there's been changes in the legislative responsibility to represent us, that's why we still have a seat at the table with our current representative. And it turned out that would be 7, so that if there was, we'd have an odd vote, you know, if it ever became any kind of particular issues about getting along. And the great part about it is no matter what commissioner sat there, or no matter what counselor sat there, we've gotten along great. There's no question that right now everybody's in a tough spot. This conversation has to happen, and it probably should have happened prior to this. We do at least once a year sit down and try to find out what direction we should probably head for, or what's been working, what's not working. The fact that we're partnered with the airport and everybody that works with it has sustained us. And it might yet, but currently because of inflation and so forth, there's issues. But that's how it was formed, and it's worked. I don't know if it's really easy to say, well, maybe we can transform the organization or make these changes, but it'll be difficult. And Walt knows, being with the county and the city in the past, it's great to have ideas, but boy, it's hard to get them home. And I just want to thank everybody here for how hard you work. And I just think that there's a tremendous amount of future. And when I drive through your community here, I'm just astounded at the amount of private investment that's gone on here in the last 24 months. It's just amazing. So, well, sure, there's problems and there's issues, but you guys being together, I think, is a wonderful thing. And I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. No, that's good. You had me at the Shiners are running.
And I'd just like to piggyback on the positives that are going on in town, because sometimes we lose focus of that, right? The good stuff we do have going on, and we have to share that more. And that, if you've been around me enough in the last year, you know that's kind of the thing with me, that we got to promote the good that we got going on to build up some momentum, because if you don't talk good, why would anybody want to come around?
Please.
I know you'd like to move on, but the one thing that
I don't even have a gavel.
well, you know, when it's tough times and you have to make a budget, come up with a budget and do cuts and whatever, then it's the most difficult to look at what benefits you. You're looking at, you know, just cutting. And by any standard that you use, as Chamber of Commerce, or whatever formula, the money turns over that they spend Chamber of Commerce says 7 times.
I did it again.
But even if you look at the raw input that these customers provide, you're looking at a lot of money for this community and this county. So that's just my take on it, and that's why I'm on the board.
Appreciate
I
that.
think it's a good thing, and I also thank you for your work and for your contributions in the past.
Well, just to sum up the KETA conversation that we've had is, I don't think anyone in this room thinks that KETA's doing a bad job or anything like that. I think we're trying to figure out how to make sure that it's sustainable as we move forward into the future. And if we're at a point where the city and the county need to start kicking in money, we want to make sure that we're exploring all options on that, including other ways of being able to bring in revenues to be able to move forward that program. So,
Seeing as we
But you have to invest.
right.
and that,
Any business person knows.
Yep,
and
100%.
and I
And you
do,
know it.
and I just want to add one more thing. If you, and Paul was there, and it wasn't necessarily directed at him, but when you were at our committee of the whole meeting, our finance meeting, if you were there and heard my thoughts about how it all went down with the International Falls EDA and why we don't have it, and where the money where this came from was going to be coming from, which would be the EDA, our EDA that we didn't need or couldn't support. Well, I put those feelings aside to make the motion to forget the bet, you know. So just so everybody knows, we do understand the importance, and that's why we did that. I think we all agree.
All right, so we'll move forward to the airport piece. I appreciate having.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reps.
That was pretty big. That isn't 10 pounds, is it?
Alright.
Your folder isn't 10 pounds, is it? You said you were pretty thick.
I appreciate that we have Thor here today, and we have Brian, the chair of the airport commission. We're in a really tough spot, and this is one of the things that the city brought up at the last meeting that we met here. We really struggle with just getting a budget that goes to the city and to the county, and then having to figure out how we fund that. I believe it was going to be an additional 2 or 3% levy increase if we didn't cut our funding to the airport this year by $175,000. We have gotten an email from Kyra about how we have to have some conversations regarding that. I do have members on the council that are very strong in their opinion that we don't have the money to fund some of the capital improvement projects at the airport, and I would love to open up the conversation with either Brian or Thor on the decision that the council made. But I also want to backtrack just a little bit. No matter what happens between now and the finalization of our budget, we really need to have a working relationship with the county on what we can afford going into the next year, and then be able to set those dollar amounts with SEH as we're doing projects moving forward, because with the cost of inflation, all of us believe wholeheartedly how important the airport is. But when we have to cut road projects, we have to cut departments, we have to cut funding in other city aspects to a joint powers agreement, it's really been a struggle on the city. We are in full support of ambulance taxing, we're in full support of an ambulance taxing district too, but an airport taxing district that could fund, and that way both the city and the county are not they're not liable for doing the levy increases that come in, it would be on that taxing committee. They would be able to set the budget for the airport. But that's where we're at, and we are in a really, really tough spot financially between the airport and the ambulance right now. The ambulance did cost us another $250,000 this last year. So that's another $250,000 that we don't have to put towards the airport. Thor, please, if you want to take that conversation.
Certainly. Yeah, thank you, Harley. First of all, I appreciate everybody getting together today, everybody getting together and discussing this, obviously very important. I appreciate the strains on the local tax base, what have you, the 18%, those are big hurdles, no question. Just a brief history on the airport and where we're at, and I've shared this before. International Falls Airport is a unique airport in the sense that there's 145 publicly funded airports in the state of Minnesota, and we are very fortunate and very blessed that of those 145, we are only one of 9 in the entire state that has scheduled carrier service. Under that umbrella, we're also only one of 6 in Minnesota that has U.S. Customs immigration. Recently, I sent an email out to some of the folks in the room, didn't get it, I apologize, but just sent out to, I believe, all county members and all city council members, obviously airport commission members, that recently we were advised that SkyWest Airlines has decided, thankfully, to rebid on us. We have a 2-year contract with them. I can't emphasize enough that as a premier carrier in the United States, SkyWest Airlines is by far the best, by far the diamond in the airline industry of regional carriers. So we're very, very fortunate, very, very blessed to have that in our group. Regarding the taxes and the funding for the airport, again, delicate issues, taxation bases, what have you. I know virtually nothing about funding or state, local, or federal dollars that are available for county projects or city projects. I wouldn't dare step into that arena. I don't know that, but I do know the aviation. I do know the airport, and those monies that have been spent out there. I don't know anywhere else where you can leverage those monies to get what we succeeded there in funding. Tremendous amount of 0% local, mixed in with some 5% local funding events, what have you. Literally over. I'm 62, going on 75, and as long as I can remember, I mean, there's been hundreds of millions of dollars of projects over that time frame, guaranteed. And so appreciate the delicacy of it, but now obviously I have a very biased point of view, no question. But for International Falls, for Koochiching County, we're also the smallest airport. We're the smallest airport in Minnesota federal carrier service. I belong to a committee of the 9 airport managers from the 9 airport carrier airports, LASAC, Local Air Special Committee, which ironically was founded by Bob Anderson back in the day, went before Congress, etc. But having said that, when I go to these meetings and these discussions come out about what's going on in International Falls, what's happening, because in the aviation world, they're very small, it's very tight, right? And so we know as our group of 9, that we have larger cities that are just begging for a carrier service. You know, I mean, they're looking at millions of dollars of pure local taxation driven, subsidies, what have you. Please come to us, etc. So just wanted to share that with the group. Whatever I can do to help through this endeavor, please. We're here to help. I feel a bit undergunned today because Kyra, who's frankly the brains of the operation, is not with us today, and I wish she was. But she's obviously a strong advocate for the airport, very talented at what she does, and knows the numbers. I know some broad. I know the broad numbers, but then into the detail. Unfortunately, I don't have her with me. And Brian, maybe you want to share something in regarding.
Well, I'm in the same situation you are, so far as knowing the dollars. But I heard her say in the meeting that so far as our budget, we never really increased it. It's been where it's at for years, The only thing that's really different is the grants and the things that we're getting for runway repair and all the things we're getting is leveraged dollars. It's, I mean, any businessman that could get the millions that we've got and only have to cough up 5%, they'd be foolish to turn it down. And to hit on what Sky West just did for 2 more years, you got to remember now is that they're bringing in starting October 9th, we'll be getting a bigger airplane, and they'll be offering first class service with that from now on too. So that's huge. I mean, there's other cities that'd be screaming to be able to have a SkyWest plane come in here and pick up your people and all of that. So, you know, and on top of that, we've got Sun Country will be coming in here in a couple of weeks, pick up 180 people and take them to Laughlin. And it sounds like they're going to continue that. We might see 3 or 4 of those flights a year. But being in the situation where I work out there and actually see the kind of traffic, you know, most people in this community don't realize how many aircraft come through that airport. And the number of people coming in here that are using, you know, they fly in here and they're staying in hotels overnight before they go up to Canada fishing. They're spending a lot, you know, they're generating a lot of revenue in town just by coming through. I will tell you this, by having customs at the airport, there are people that fly in here almost every day. There's somebody coming in, flying in from Vancouver, from Boston, you name it, to get their global entry. They'll pay $1,400 plane ticket just to come in here and get the global entry. And a lot of the people that I talk to say the reason they come here is because we're an international airport. They're coming in here because of the ease of checking customs. You know, I don't know, Thor, if you have the numbers of where you're at with international flights. I would say they're probably right at the top in the state, the amount of international flights that come in here.
Yeah, we are.
And hit on the Qantas deal that we're doing right now. Qantas Airlines is putting a lot of planes in their boneyard, but they're bringing them through here on the way to the boneyard. And you know, they're coming in here and we're servicing them. And,
Sure.
and the Belgian Air Force was bringing their C-130s in here on their way to Mountain Home, where they were doing their F-15 training. They're bringing their people through here. I mean, the airport's huge. You can't believe, you know. North Dakota, their flight program, you know. Those planes are coming in here almost daily with the student pilots coming through and all. You know, the airport's huge for this community.
And I think
we're not trying to increase our budget that I know of for.
I don't believe
Kyra
so.
said
I don't want to be
she's
clear.
maintained it and it's not going up. You know, and what do we get from? Don't we get like $1 million a year from the FAA?
Automatically without any
Automatically
discretion,
that
correct?
goes in to help our budget.
so. The question I would have, and I guarantee that Kyra is probably the person to have the conversation with, and I realize she's not available right now, is the $350,000 that is being requested of the city and the county. That is just for operations. The 700, there's no the projects and stuff in it, and I realize that. Like what Brian had said, you know, yeah, we get a great investment at, you know, paying 5% for $1 million project. That's still $50,000, you know, and we just need to really come up with an understanding of how we can better access those budgets in the future. I mean, this year we're having conversations. I mean, our levy is topped out at 9.5. There is some wiggle room in that, but we're really struggling. And just like I know you guys are, I mean, 19 or 18% levy increase is not easy. But we don't have a lot of opportunities on where we can cut our costs in the city either. You know, as we're doing our union contracts, are doing our inflation from any of the projects that we're doing for just city services, we're up 4 to 5% in our levy this year. So we're not funding our own residents, and when we need to move forward. We are, in fact, and this is not a dig on the county, but we are, in fact, funding the rest of the county on our ambulance service. We can't continue to do both, and that's really where we're at.
If I may add, then to be honest, if we went to hire 2 new police officers, that we probably would have had that $100 and some thousand that we cut, but and like Brian said, most people don't realize it goes out on the airport, but I think most of the population would rather have 2 more police officers.
Well,
And like the leverage, how I get it, I get money, you know, but if they want, like he says, if whatever, say it's 5%, 10%, that's $100,000, so that's easy equation. If you have $100,000, it's like they knock down a new Tahoe to $40,000. Pete still can't buy it. You know, that's one thing we're saying is just how we can work this out somehow with funding. Not that it's not important, because I just landed it 2 weeks ago. It was awesome. Of course, I only fly every 7 years, but that's another story.
And I think that we're in a position where the city would love to sit down with and just a representative. I mean, legitimately a representative of us, a representative of the county, and you know, Thor and Kyra and Brian, and maybe not Brian because now we're having a quorum. But if we could just sit down and try to figure this out, because we're not anti-airport, we're not anti-KETA, we just can't continue to fund everything that we have and everything that we're partners in. You know, I think that's the key to all of this is when we're guaranteed to fund all of our partnerships, that only pulls us from being able to take away from our residents. And I think that that's what we're struggling with the most right now. And every time we have this conversation, the ambulance comes up. And it is the scariest thing that we may, in the next 3 years, go bankrupt as a city unless we just start raising the taxes of just the residents of International Falls. We're in a tough bind, losing $250,000 a year. So I would love to sit down and have the conversation with, you know, myself, the chair, Thor, Kyra, and just see what we can do to work this out. If there are some contracts that could be cut, but we're in a really, really tough spot.
Well, I will say this, we have the whole airport commission in this room. And if at the next few meetings, we need to sit down and see what we can do to trim the budget and whatever, then we need to do that. I don't have a problem with that. But you do got to remember is that a lot of things happened in the last, let's say, 10 years with the new terminal and everything else. But it's winding down. I can't think of any big projects really that are coming up and that need to come up, you know, and we're new. Yeah, we've got our problems with some of the new stuff.
We have a minor problem with our roof, but we'll get through this. It's a minor problem, yeah.
But I'm set on the
That was,
budget. I understand the budgets, and I know that, if we got to try and tighten our belt. But if we got the whole commission here, we can start figuring that out.
I think one of the biggest projects that we did this year was the new fuel station there, and that was mandated by the MPCA because our old tanks were starting to leak. Otherwise, I think that's.
But we're lucky enough that CARES funding,
Yeah, that CARES fund.
took care of a lot of that.
And I think part of the budget situation that we're in too is last year, as we were doing our budget, there was this thought that there was going to be some of the grants coming in and that it would offset our levy from last year. Well, we ended up doing a large levy increase last year to cover that airport, which we thought we'd be able to come down 2% from our levy, but the monies didn't come in, it didn't focus. So now this year, we're running into the exact same situation, although there isn't that hanging fruit that we're reaching for to be able to get it. But I love Brian's idea too. I mean, we could have a special airport meeting to see if there's things we can cut in the budget to move forward.
I mean, I think we need to really sit down and not only look at where we cut the budget, but, you know, are there areas where we can increase things?
Yeah.
Like leases on hangars and things like that. You know, I think maybe we need to get smart and talk to other airports and see what they're charging and what they're doing and seeing if we're in line with them or are we way out of whack, you know, that what we're charging to lease a hangar is down here and everyone else is up here. Like, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can certainly get out there and talk to other airports and see what's going on. That's for sure.
And I think that's what all of this, the two items that we've handled so far on this has been is how do we try to get some of these costs in check? How do we look at all options that are on the table to be able to move some of this stuff forward and be able to continue, you know? So.
Because I know you guys don't want to raise the levy any more than
You want yours raised?
Want it raised, you know. I mean, it's the way of the world, though, especially after COVID, things have changed so much. It's crazy.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
And on that note, that's a good point, Brian, is that, of course, the airport operations too, you know, this is our first full season out of COVID. So, you know, the Canadians not open the border up until August of 22 last year until we're really, you know, now we have our feet, you know, right now we're just getting our feet underneath us. Overly simplified, 2.5 years down, 85%. So, you know, it's interesting times right now, obviously, in this event. And so we've gone through some financial storms. CARES Act was kept, the airport kept Anderson Flying Service alive, guaranteed. We would have gone bankrupt without those monies, factual. So that's something to keep in mind. If I may, I may circle back. I don't want to hog the conversation, but I'm just kind of processing some numbers here, as Brian mentioned, about Qantas. Here's an example of what goes on, about the trickle-down effect of monies that come to the airport. 6 months ago, I read an article about Qantas Airlines was mothballing 16 of their Boeing 717s and they're replacing it with a smaller, more efficient aircraft. Qantas was looking at, and is doing it at this time, they're flying those aircraft to Southern California for mothballing, what we call the graveyard. And I just thought on a whim, you know, I'll reach out to the Qantas leadership and just see if they're interested, see if we can, you know, interest them in services here. You know, I thought at first, I just looked at the globe, looked at the map, thought, well, man, that's you know, not really worth our effort to contact them and see if they want to come. The Great Circle all the way around to us, to clear customs, to get into the United States, to get the aircraft to the graveyard. And remarkably, wow, I got an email back, and it just started this dialogue, and we sort of did back and forth, talked with local customs officials, people, etc. To put that into local finance, to put into local economic development, each one of those aircraft had 5 crew members on board, and they stay at least one night, sometimes 2. That's 5 rooms. That's meals, catering, food for everyone, rental cars, etc. If we're providing, we also provide them courtesy cars, etc. That's motels, shopping locally, etc. So that's just one entity. And that's just Qantas Airlines as an example. But thank you for bringing that up. I actually forgot about it, but discussing it as was shared earlier about that, taking these monies and times 7, just you can't emphasize to the group enough. And again, it's a biased position, no question it is, 100%. But for anybody in my seat or in Brian's seat, I just can't emphasize enough that, how do I say this correctly? Please, there we go. Please don't look at the airport as a liability. Please look at it as an incredible asset. It is an incredible asset, no question. And just please keep that in mind for the group.
So Thor, with those vehicles or those planes that came in that
Sure.
brought all those folks, how much funds came into the airport specifically for those projects or for the? No.
Sure. Parking, percentage of our sales to them, parking, fuel, etc. Landing fee, etc. I can get those numbers, but I don't have it in front of me right now.
I'm just wondering how that affects the airport commission and those numbers that we're dealing with. I mean, the trickle down effect, I don't think anybody here can argue that.
Sure.
But the question is maybe our landing fees need to go up. I mean,
Okay.
and those are the conversations that you and I have had, and we don't want to get out, we don't want to be level with everybody else. We want to be just a little bit cheaper so that there's an advantage to having
Sure.
people come here. I understand that, but I also think that we need to figure out how to get our revenues up as well. And I don't know when we've raised our fees. I don't know when, and those are things that I think we definitely need to look at as we move forward, but we don't want to get out of whack or be level with everybody else, because we are in a different playing field than everybody else.
You bet. So, thank you. Absolutely.
Any other discussion on the airport? Okay. Well, I appreciate all these conversations. This is really, really good. I won't swear. We'll move on to housing, and I am going to have to sneak out at some point relatively quick, but housing was on the agenda as brought in by the county, so I will hand this one off to Jason to discuss.
And I thank you. Thanks again for everybody being here. And I think this is the stuff that's going to kind of keep our county viable in this housing. And I think with some of the funding that we're going to have incoming for the cities and the counties, small cities, International Falls is in our counties, I really think we need to team up and get a plan. We need to get a plan to expand the city limits of International Falls in an appropriate manner to kind of include certain areas that could be developed that are natural in development, is what I think. So, and I know there's an annexation plan forecast over the course of time, but surely we would like to have some conversations on how a person can get from point A to point B, along with some fruit in between, hopefully too, some of the expansion of the western edges of the city limits. So there's some opportunity there, I think, that we can maybe further discuss in the very near future, actually. So
Excellent.
That's something. I don't have a lot of this information. I was supposed to have this information, but they present this information to you on a screen on a board with a room full of people. And I got a lot of pictures of that screen. But I could not keep up with the gal that was talking. She was talking a mile a minute and was very excited about it. And so the room was excited as well, but I just don't have a lot of information to share. That was my goal, is to get that to you today, but I did not do that. So.
Well, fantastic. Well, you know what? I love these conversations. I think that these are good. And, I love Brian's conversation about bringing our concerns with the airport to the airport commission, having maybe a special meeting to discuss some of those things. And I would really like to continue doing this. Do it if the first Tuesday of every month works for everyone. I think it makes sense for me. I really think that this is positive. We don't have to come up with a new KETA, but he's not even paying attention.
Well, it's always good to, be
Right.
able to understand, the other side a little better, what's going on, and things like that. I will say with housing though, we're hurting.
Mhm.
I sit on the board of trustees at the hospital, and over the last couple of years, we've lost a lot of good candidates,
Yes.
physicians, nurses, and whatever, because they come here. We just had one last week. turned it down because they looked at the housing and there's no houses.
And I like, because we had a meeting, was it last week before the HRA?
Yeah.
And we're trying to get something working with them, but one of the people there, one of their board members, looked at the housing that's available in town, and we're talking about the lack of housing. Well, she said, well, there's like, I don't know how many places, 27 or 30, and I tried in a polite way, yeah, but that's not what some people are looking for. They want new, they want, I could put up my house up for sale as much as I love it. I'm not sure a doctor at the hospital, even though I think Salt Falls is awesome on First Avenue, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Please.
I'm on the housing collaborative that meets, we used to meet monthly, now we're meeting quarterly, and it's a group of stakeholders that are looking at this problem and admiring this problem. But there's a lot of money, the legislature designated over $1 billion for housing, and a lot of that money is targeted at rural areas. The only way you can get out of this situation, the city, county, and put the school district in this too, they're looking at a huge referendum that's going to be very challenging, is to add population, is to add tax base. And so I commend the city and the county and all the cities in the county have invested a lot in infrastructure. I look at the broadband going in now toward Gold Shores up there. That's important to this too, but the key is housing. And we've got some areas that we think lend themselves to housing, but you're going to need an active HRA, and you're going to need a lot of focused people that are all pulling in the same direction. Because if you can leverage that infrastructure money down at the state, then putting water and sewer into some of these areas becomes a lot easier, given especially the budget constraints you guys are under.
So I actually had forgot about that. So thank you, Pete, for bringing it up and adding those thoughts, Paul. We do have some movement on housing that I'd forgotten. The city had reached out to our local HRA, and for the folks that don't know, our local HRA runs the Woodland Park Apartments on behalf of the city of International Falls. We had been very, very interested in the $1 billion plus that Paul had referenced. I had also met with the Commissioner of Housing from the state regarding that about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And the issue that we have is if the city of International Falls has an HRA, projects have to go through your HRA. The EDA, the International Falls EDA, has all of the same rights and responsibilities as a HRA, but since we have an HRA, they have to be the ones who do a lot of these projects. The EDA can help in some capacity, and we also can do some things specifically as a city depending on what the projects are. But most of the projects do have to go through the HRA. We had met with the HRA and we explained our position that we needed the HRA to do more, or we had asked them if they were willing to disband so then our EDA would have those opportunities to do more and do things in the community. It took us a while to be able to have our second meeting. They had multiple meetings with different folks regarding what our request was. We did have a meeting a couple weeks ago with the HRA, and they are willing to do more. They had talked about potentially doing a condo. We are in the infancy of being able to work on that project. There is conversation about them being able to maybe get a secretary to be able to give more focus to the HRA director to work some of these projects that have not been happening in the past. So just like we're having this conversation with the city and county, the city and the HRA are now having some conversations on how we can start working on some of the housing issues. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because I think that's important for everyone to know that that is now a relationship that has been recultivated to be able to try to move some of these housing projects forward and get some of that $1 billion money. Please.
I would say that of anything, housing should be your number one priority, because you've got the infrastructure, you got an airport that can get people here, you got two good highways that people can get here. But when they get here, how are you gonna grow this if there's no place for them to stay? You know, I drive to Thief River every Wednesday, and I go through Badette and Roseville and get to Thief River, and I see, you know, the buildings going up there, you know, the housing, you know, similar to the Woodland Apartments and that. And they're doing that because it's the only way that Marvin Windows can grow, and Polaris and Arctic Cat. You know, and they're having the same problems, but I see them putting housing in. So I would say housing is number one. You know, you gotta have places. If you want people to come here, they gotta have a place to live.
And that right, and it's kind of a two, as I've learned the last couple of terms that I'm here, Keita, you know, you gotta have a workforce, but you gotta have some place for the workforce to stay, for someone to come here. Well, you know, it goes like that. And that is it too. And then that's why there's all that money, especially for outskirts, for workforce, housing like that. And people hear that and they, yeah, I think we need to do it sooner than later.
Well, and one of the things that that came up, and we had talked about this last time about the annexation of the airport. We have a project that is a potential project, but they need city services. And if the airport were to come into the city of International Falls, on the south side of 332, we have someone who is interested in putting in an apartment complex on that side of town, but we can't even look at that project unless the airport comes into the city limits of International Falls. So that's another piece that we're on. I mean, we're not going to spend the engineering cost to try to figure out what it would be to bring sewer and water to this potential site unless it's in the city of International Falls, because we can't provide the services. So. Well, you have something, I can see it.
And pertaining to that too, that it's, I talked to the city administrator before she left for vacation. Now she's on vacation, but she says as soon as she gets back, she's got all the information for that we had before for annexing on the airport, and he'll be approached at that point.
The other thing that we're here now and back, AV will certainly help.
Yeah.
But you know, to all your point and everybody's, you got to have this whole mix of housing.
Yeah.
Single family, affordable. That's where all the money gets. You know, tax credits are aimed at that. But you need it all. And the other thing that if we're trying to sell Koochiching County and I Falls, you're seeing a lot of retirees moving back, at least summer residents, but there's also people moving from the metro that can work remotely that are sick and tired of living in the metro. And we're selling lifestyle up here, but in order for you to be in the conversation, you've got to be able to put it somewhere that has, you know, the amenities of their expectations. And so, anyway, I'm sorry, guys, I'm me out, but thanks for hearing.
Want me to take over? What else?
Anybody else have anything to add on any of these subjects? Actually, I think we made some good headway here on the airport discussion, along with the long-term funding. I think that's a great discussion to have. And housing is, I too am a big believer in this housing. Every house, every dwell is going to create tax base for the city and or the county, and that's forever. If the ones that house is erected and sitting there, you're going to get something out of it. So. That to me is a huge thing as well. So that to me would be a focus on where to go and how to get there and start moving like now. So
and another thing I was at the Keita board, not Keita, too many K's. Kutaska last week, and I talked to Isaac Jake Meyer, and he said, you know, in a few years, you know, if we have a spot, they'd be interested in looking at developing something again in their national falls. So it's all that we just need some progress and some areas where to do it. You were there,
and I recommended over across from to come talk to you about that spot across from West Falls or South Falls Apartments, because that would be accessed off from 2nd Avenue East only.
Oh yeah.
And it'd be a perfect fit because there's already motels or housing, or not motels, but housing in that area.
Yeah, and the city has identified, started the process of just individual lots that could be developed, but we're gonna need like a subdivision or, you know, where you can have, you know, create a neighborhood and stuff like to really get, I think, bang for the buck. But yeah, there's no simple answer, and it's gonna take some investment and time, and hopefully the HRA can move on that. And, thanks again.
Can I say something? The real main concern is concentrating on our senior citizens. I've gone 2 years to the council. What they want, seniors want 1-floor condos or whatever, you know, you don't want to climb stairs. Then you have those houses, nice houses, for sale.
Yes.
But they totally forget about the seniors, and we have nothing for them here, nothing. They go to Bemidji, they go to Grand Rapids.
Well, and that's why, that's
I
one of the
know,
reasons
but
that.
I'm just saying, I've hollered about it at the council for 2 friggin' years.
And
But
that's.
they forget us. They
Well,
throw
that's
us
why,
under the bus.
that's one of the reasons we brought up the condos when we're talking to the HRA. That reason, one level,
Yeah.
one,
And-
and so I just, you know, it's not forgetting.
No, but
Forget it,
I've been told,
forgotten.
well, there's no place to put them, it costs too much to do this, and nobody built them. That is not true. That is not true. There's somebody from Bemidji that wants to talk to the council, nobody talks to them. I do know that.
All they got is call, this isn't,
They have, they've tried. But I'm just saying, you gotta kind of give us a break here.
yeah, I
If
agree.
there's somebody from Bemidji, all they have to do is show up at a council meeting or a county board meeting.
Well, they've been trying to get a hold of them. Just
When they can get home, all they gotta do is show up.
So, yeah, they can certainly do public.
Tell them to show up. I'm serious, tell them to show up.
We just want to nail down this next meeting date if we're serious about.
I would meet, that works for me, I don't know anybody else.
So today's Tuesday, the October 3rd. What day in November, the first part of November? Or you want to go to the end of October?
Does this work for you?
I think we have a committee of the whole the first Tuesday in November, the 7th.
And you have a city
So I
council
can
on the
move
6th.
that, or we can do it Monday.
Yeah, but both are at night.
Okay. I mean, if it's okay, do we want to try the 6th, which is November 6th,
On
which is
Monday?
a Monday? And it's up to the council. I know they have meetings probably starting afternoon.
November 6th in the morning at this time, so, yeah, we're fine.
Okay. Well, let's shoot for November 6th, which is a Monday. And you want to shoot 10 a.m. again? Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. And then please, again, if there's any agenda items or further discussion on any of these that we have here or in the past, last meeting that we had, we passed along to Adam or Betty, we'll get them compiled and get them on a list and we'll get them brought forward. So, any questions for further discussions? If anybody has any questions about what's going on or what's potentially going to happen, certainly put those questions on here, whether they're yours, whether they're a cumulative question from either entity regarding.
Great discussion.
Yeah, and then we'll just maybe discuss it right here at the time if that's okay. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.